one thing that my father taught me, both my parents, but really my father, he implemented me and my siblings, always go out, get what you need to get, but you always bring back to your community. You never forget your community. So that's I think that's just really instilled in me as well. Like, yes, the shoulder to stoa shook you. However, you have a community. Learn to be efficient as much as you can, but you have a purpose, and that purpose is coming back home. So just knowing that this is your calling is huge.
Hi, my name is Augustine Colebrook, and I'm the principal at Midwifery Wisdom Collective. I speak on this podcast about big picture political issues and the future of our profession.
Hey y'all, I am Jamara, and I'm a midwife. I'm also a birth justice activist, and this season I am looking forward to sharing stories of Black midwives and the communities they serve.
Hello, beloved birth community. I'm Angela Love, nurse midwife since 2004, preceptor, and mother. I have a home birth practice called Midwife Love and a national telehealth practice called Midwife RX. My mission is to keep birth choices available and to educate the next generation of midwives for our daughters and grandchildren. Matriarchy now.
I'm Leila Wyatt. I get to share with you the voices of student midwives from across the country and beyond. This season, we focus on those students who just graduated, are about to sit for the NARM, or did yesterday, and we get tips and tricks for you for what happens at the end of the student midwife journey.
Well, welcome back to the Midwifery Wisdom podcast, and I'm excited to be joined by my co-host Leila and some lovely young midwives. So, hi, young midwives. How are you? Do you want to start with introductions, Annaliese?
Sure, that works. Well, hi, I'm Annaliese. I'm a CPM. Just recently sat the NARM a few months ago. And I'm living and working in the Middle East.
Awesome. Welcome.
Thank you.
Kalu, is that how we say your name?
So that is how it's spelled, but it's actually Kayla. So
okay.
So I'm Kayla, and I just graduated from Southwest Tech.
Congrats.
And I'm about to sit for my NARM. I'm kind of submitting documents right now, and then after that I start everything for the Indiana license.
How exciting. Awesome. And then we have Trinity. Trinity, will you give your intros?
Hi, my name is Trinity. I'm a student midwife. I'm in Ohio. I start school this summer, so I'm getting on the road to becoming a midwife. The goal is to be certified by 2026. So, yeah.
Well, I love it. We have three of you at three distinct stages of midwifery, about to start school, but having already attended birth, graduated school, but about to sit for the NARM, and passed the NARM and about to start practicing. And that is such an exciting representation of the new generation of midwifery. So my first question, and any or all of you could jump in, is why midwifery? It got you at a young age. A lot of people come to midwifery because they had a baby and they got to experience midwifery, or they got to experience something they really didn't want and then chose midwifery. But how did you all get to midwifery? What called you to it?
Well, and I want to know, since this is the youngest midwife podcast, how old are y'all?
Yeah, we're going to ask that for sure.
Okay. I was like, wait a minute. I'm looking and I'm like,
let's ask that for sure. When you tell us how midwifery, the bug bit you, tell us about how old you are.
Yeah, so I actually got into midwifery because I knew that I wanted to work overseas, actually in the area of the world where I'm currently practicing. But I was 14 the first time I went overseas, and 16 when I really felt the call into midwifery. And I was actually in a rural hospital in East Africa at the time when I I just knew that it was something that I was going to go after as soon as I finished high school. So I went into midwifery school at 17, and then I actually moved here 4 days after sitting the NARM. So I didn't waste any time actually getting over here, but it's just this huge need. I mean, the maternal child healthcare gap in so many places in the world. Just knew that I wanted to be part of the solution.
How did you know? I want to know, like, what moved your heart or your mind, or like what called you to this? Did you see something? Did you hear something?
Honestly, the only explanation for it is that it was God, because I never wanted to do medical. I never wanted to, I don't know. It was just not something that ever naturally would have crossed my mind. Like, my mom had planned hospital births. Like, especially like the out of hospital midwifery, like that was not a thing. But I think, like, in some ways the need is the call too. Like,
yeah,
the need is obvious.
And how old are you, Annaliese?
I'm 20.
20. Awesome. So you've been really focusing on birth work for 6 years now.
Yes, but it's been 4 years since I actually managed to start midwifery school. So
4 years attending. Okay, that's amazing. Thank you so much. Kayla?
So, Annaliese, our timelines are very similar. So
what was
just
happening in the world like
me
4 to
is-
6
well,
years ago?
I'm 20. I actually grew up in birth community because my lovely mother is a midwife. And she had me and my 3 younger brothers at home. So, like, her first midwife at that time was in retirement and wasn't even a midwife who sutured 20 years ago. So I just got to see her go through school. I got to see all of her hard work in that span of time. And when I was 14, I was really getting into photography. And I was like, I don't know what kind of photos I want to do. I don't like portrait. I don't like doing family photos. They're too much work. And my mom's like, you want to go to a birth? And I was like, yeah, I want to go to a birth. So at 14, I went to my first birth. And then at 16, I was trying to figure out like what I actually wanted to do. I was like in the cusp of like, do I want to be like a literature professor? Do I want to do something with birth, like be a doula? Because from ages like 14 to 16, that is the question I got was, do you want to be a midwife? No, I don't want to be a midwife.
Yeah, my mom.
Why would I ever want to be a midwife? So it was no until I went to a birth. I can't exactly remember even which birth it was, but I just remember going to a birth when I was 16, about to turn 17. And I was like, that's not that intense. I can do it. It's not that intense. I got this. So after that, I was like, I could seriously be a midwife. Like at that point, I'd been going to births for so long that I couldn't imagine not waking up at like 3 a.m. to just like go to a birth.
Oh,
That was just so foreign. It was just like, what do you mean? Like if I did something else, I wouldn't get up in the middle of the night and just go to a birth for like 2 days. Like, what do you mean?
like a normal 9 to 5? Who wants bank hours? That's boring.
So then I was thinking about Mercy in Action, but there are multiple midwives here who've done Southwest Tech. So I was like, I slipped into Southwest Tech. I was the last person they accepted in 2021. When I was 17 is when I started midwifery school because I graduated early. And then I just started that whole student midwife journey with my mom as my preceptor, which actually worked really well. Like it was never like mom and daughter dynamic that was like rubbing in like the wrong way. It was like, no, she's my preceptor. And
that's
like, yeah. So it was just a really good dynamic. And I would also say that it was definitely more of a God thing of like that I actually ended up being a midwife because you don't
did not intend to
midwives. You're 20. You just don't. My entire class was like moms of 6, moms of 3.
Yes, yes.
All of that.
Yes, that's amazing. And you're 20 as well, right?
Yes.
Kayla? Okay, awesome. Well, Trinity, will you tell us some about your story? Because you also, I think, were influenced by a family member. Is that right? Tell me what happened.
I was influenced by my Aunt Rhonda. She's a doula in Minnesota. And from a young age, I'd like to say birth, babies and mothers have always been in my surroundings. I'm a middle child. And so my younger brother, he was a C-section baby. So I got to see my mom postpartum during that and see her go through her postpartum phase. And then as I was getting older, my Auntie Rhonda was just helping her friends in hospitals. And eventually she found the word and she's like, oh, I'm a doula. So she took all the trainings and everything. And eventually she moved to Minnesota. And that's when she started, I'd like to say she invested in me. Her, along with my parents, they all just kind of invested in me. She would send me books on the anatomy of the male and female body. She just sent me the reproductive system books. Like, it was just all this investment that she put into me. And I don't think she realized it, but it really did benefit me. Like, I wouldn't be where I'm at today if it wasn't for those books. And eventually at one point, my mom just saw how intrigued I was with mothers and their children. And she asked me, Trinity, why don't you be a doula like your Auntie Rhonda? My father was really big into getting trades. He was like, you really don't need to go to school, just get a trade, and being a doula is a trade. So my mom was like, you should be a doula like your Auntie Rhonda. And so I reached out to her and she told me what a doula was. And honestly, it sounded like a dream job. I was like, I just get to help pregnant families all the time and, make sure moms are okay and make sure they're feeling great about themselves. Like, why wouldn't I? That's amazing. And so when I was 14, I went to Minnesota and spent the summer with her and I got to attend my first birth. It was 2 hospital births and a mom in prodromal labor. I called it a practice birth for like the longest. And then I came back home and I attended Wright State University as a college credit plus student during my my first year of high school. And I took an English course and I wrote a lot of, we had 4 big papers and all 4 big papers were on the Black maternal mortality rate and the Black infant death in the United States. And so it was shocking. I was like, why? And eventually I wrote about solutions. And the biggest solution was Black and brown bodies need to see people that look like them and feel safe. And I decided I wanted to be an OB at 14. 14. I decided I wanted to be an OB. And I eventually became a doula. And I just thought, if I can solve it, just be a part of the solution. Like you said, Annaliese, be a part of the solution. So eventually at the age of 16, my Auntie Rhonda thought it would be a dope idea if I reached out to a midwife because I didn't feel safe being an OB and not seeing natural births. Because also during my studies, I saw how we originally gave birth at home. Like, it wasn't a fearful thing. And so I reached out to several midwives, and the midwife that reached back out is my now preceptor, Emily Schultz. She's amazing. And I've attended over 110 births under her practice. So it's been a phenomenal journey. And I honestly I wouldn't give it up for the world. By my 5th home birth, I attended with her. I was like, I'm going to be a midwife because it's just the level of care that we give family. It's on a totally different spectrum. So that's when I decided.
And how old are you now, Trinity?
I'm 18.
So exciting. You're well on your way. So you've decided to go to school to get a MEEC accredited CPM?
Yes.
Awesome. So you're going to breeze through your schoolwork. And do you have to redo numbers or are you going to count the numbers you've already done?
I have to redo numbers because I'm in an unlicensed state.
Yeah.
But I'm fine with it. I'm fine.
Yeah. You're coming in with as many numbers as they require to graduate. And that's unusual. I think Leila did that too.
Yeah, I was just going to say, did y'all have anything like that where it was like, you got these numbers, but then they said they didn't count, or those expire, or, you have to repeat things because it was whatever. Was there any situation like that for y'all too?
I had a lot of stuff that didn't get signed over the year. I worked with 11 different midwives by the time I finished. One for the majority of my training, but quite a lot. Had a lot of paperwork that ended up having to be thrown out, which I think is just kind of how it goes. It's part of the process, but yeah.
So yours was majority like
paperwork. It definitely
re-sign.
is that.
Yeah.
If when they switch to digital, we'll have a different reality. But right now.
Yeah. Well, and for anyone listening, like I mean, NARM and PEP and all the different schools are a little bit different, but I uploaded all my paperwork to Adobe PDF, and it is all online, and it is all e-sign, and it is never lost. And so like walking around with a portfolio of pieces of paper is like not necessary. So students listening, use your technology to help you out.
Are you sure they'll accept e-signs? I've only heard that they'll accept.
Won't yet, but
if you're in a MEEC accredited school, right?
NARM doesn't. NARM
your signatures.
Yeah.
But so think about that. And it's not really an e-sign. Like we're not even doing like e-signature. Like she's with her hand, like signing the piece of paper on Adobe, right? And initialing every little box through Adobe, but just some ways. And then it's a shared drive where it's all there and labeled ready to sign and not ready to sign. And so there's some ways that you can maximize not losing paperwork, but I mean, sometimes the midwife just won't sign it.
I was PEP too, so it was just kind of
couldn't do anything about it. You're walking around with the hundreds of pieces of paper. We've heard that story of students like running into a burning house to save their paperwork because it was so important. Yeah. Literally. Like their house was burning down and they ran back in to get their paperwork because that. Can you imagine? Yeah.
I really can, actually. That's the sad part. Well,
Leila, what about you? Did you have any like weird number things?
Tell us about you, Kayla.
Thankfully not. Thankfully, I didn't have any weird number things. So like all of my birth photography.
Your mom was your preceptor. If you had weird number things, I would have to be like,
true.
I didn't have any weird number things because she had really good preceptors, but she wanted to really make sure that everything got signed and everything was like the way that it needed to be.
Were you her first student by any chance or no?
Oh yeah, I was her first pancake. I guess her first kid and her first student.
Wow.
So
I think that's gonna do her really good though. Like she was able to like learn and figure out how to be a good preceptor with someone she could really communicate well with. And now imagine how great of a preceptor she'll be with someone that's not her daughter. Mm-hmm. That's cool.
So but all my birth photography ended up coming in as my 10 observes. Yeah. And then I had maybe 5 assists by the time that I started school. But the vast majority of my birth experience was birth photography and just like sitting for
witnessing. Yeah.
Yeah. And then finally by the end, I was like itching to like actually start assisting.
Yeah. That's beautiful. Well, we heard Trinity's real kind of underlying pull in was to be a part of the solution for the maternal health crisis, specifically around BIPOC folks in the US. And Annaliese, it feels like your desire was out of country. Can you tell us about what you're planning to do and where you're working now and like what this inspiration was?
Yeah, I mean, the need is obviously huge in the US, and I saw that throughout my apprenticeship. I apprenticed for the most part in Spokane, Washington, and so saw a lot of needs there as well. But obviously the needs overseas are huge too. And yeah, I'm currently living in the Middle East, kind of doing a little bit of everything right now. I'm the only, I guess, midwives here are not really independent practitioners. We're working towards that, but right now they're essentially nurses, and there's not a very high level of training that goes into that. And so as far as like a midwife who's able to practice independently, I am the only one within 2 hours of here. So there's some 2 hours away in one direction, some 2 hours away in another direction. But I'm the only one in the city, and we have, I think, several million people here. And so, there's just a huge amount of need for that. Gonna start doing some birth work in the local hospital. Gonna maybe do some stuff for expats, as I've already been doing some stuff for expats as well. So just the need for like testing and prenatal care and having these conversations about informed consent and scopes of practice and autonomy have been kind of the main things so far. But yeah, I plan to be here. I say I'll be here until God moves me somewhere else. And so I'm assuming a very long time. And it's been really cool. Yeah, getting my feet on the ground. And there's so many opportunities here to make a change. Just because there's been so much conflict in this region. And so we're still kind of in the post-conflict, like stabilization, recovery phase, where we're figuring out, okay, what is the healthcare system here even really going to look like? So I think it's a really exciting place to be.
Have you met the midwives in Dimona?
Mm-mm.
There's a commune in the south of Israel that is self-contained. They grow their own food. They have their own school. They have their own health center. And two of the midwives that work there came to a couple of my trainings several years back, and they're independent. They do home births and clinic births, and they're really amazing providers. I'll connect you if you want.
That would be great. Yeah, it's definitely been something. I haven't managed to travel much out of this region, but I definitely want to reach out other places in the Middle East too, and kind of see what's going on. I mean, this area is pretty small, so I know what's going on here, but in surrounding countries.
Yeah, there's amazing things happening. Actually, Georgia has some really pro midwifery legislation happening, and there's a lot of midwives working in the hospital in Georgia, and Dubai is hopefully going to have some changes soon. And like, there's some really amazing things happening in the Middle East. It'll be interesting to see who you connect with. Well, I have a question for you guys. Many of you may not know, but I was a young midwife, and this is part of why I really wanted to have this conversation. I want to have a conversation about all the careers that midwives had before they became midwives, because there are some amazing stories there as well. But this is kind of a unique thing, as you all have identified. There aren't too many who find our calling so early. And I actually attended my first home birth when I was 8 years old. My aunt was a midwife, and I got to attend her birth. And then I started right out of high school, like you guys, and never had a job besides midwifery. This is all I've ever done my whole life, and I love it. And the question I have for you all is, it was such a challenging experience to be new in practice at the age that we are, because people have a hard time understanding the scope of experience and knowledge that you have given your age. And so I remember this one time very clearly. I'd spoken to this couple on the phone, and they were primips, and they were in their 40s having their first baby. And they had all the questions and all the worries. And we had gone on and through all the things. And they came in for their first appointment, and I met them in the front office, and they looked past me and they looked around me, and they were like, "Where's Augustine?" And I was like, "Hi, I'm Augustine." They're like, No. The woman we were speaking to was like a 50-year-old woman. We want to speak with her. And I was like, "No, it's me. I am the one you spoke to." They're like, "There's no way, you're too young." So I wonder if any of you have run into that as you're interviewing or meeting with people, like, you can't possibly be the midwife. Has that happened to you?
I haven't gotten that in regards to you can't be the midwife, because I'm still a student, but I've definitely got you don't look like your age, or you don't sound like your age.
That's true.
And I tell people all the time, I try not to act my age, because if I do, you probably won't want me in your space. So, I mean, but naturally, I'm very fortunate, because I did grow up in a very mature household where my parents talked to us like we were adults or human beings. So it's just like, I just talk, and they're like, "Whoa, you're 18, 17, 16. I didn't think that of you." But that's the closest I've gotten.
That's very similar to kind of what I experience, is like you don't act your age, which I mean that's a huge compliment. Thank you. But I guess, like, I guess the only like maturity thing that is between me and midwifery right now is I can't be licensed until I'm 21.
Oh, interesting.
So in my state, I can't be licensed until I'm 21. So that's all the way in March. So
Okay.
I guess that's like the only thing that's like between me and midwifery, or like that age gap barrier type deal.
Mm-hmm.
I guess for me, it was less like the clients for the most part were really sweet. And my main preceptor who trained me, she was like, "Oh, that's awesome. You're going into midwifery so young. That will give you more years to practice," which I think is a great attitude to have. But definitely had some of it was more of our surrounding birth worker community who were like, "Really? Like you're gonna like finish and move overseas at 20?" And I was like, "Yeah, really." So it was more from them, I think, than from clients. And especially like where I'm living now, like I haven't really like, they're just grateful to have a midwife here. Like they don't really even ask how old I am, which is nice.
That's really, I could see that totally. And, you know, I'm that other birth worker, you know, like I'm the other side where I'm like, my philosophy is like young doula, old midwife, you know, like I want the young, fresh, energetic hands for double hip squeeze and counter pressure and being up all night so the wise old midwife can, you know, be coming in as the medical provider. That philosophy is like, somewhere was told to me or somewhere was set in my mind. And to think about a young 20-year-old midwife who's never had children, I feel sort of ways. I do. I feel sort of ways. Like and that's me as a birther. I would only hire a midwife that has birthed, has attended many tens of years of birth, right? And that's not every client though, y'all. Like that, there are clients out there who want the young, fresh midwife who is very skilled and educated and is energetic, right? And it doesn't have to be the wise old, you know, person who's had 10 babies. So I just want, you know, to say that if you ever do feel that just might be the wrong client for you. Like they're not looking for you, right? They're looking for a different midwife, but there's gonna be clients that are looking for you. And more and more
There's
clients,
more
actually.
and more clients who are looking for modern, youthful, energetic, fresh, and not jaded and not biased and not like, it feels like so many older midwives get stuck in their ways and they only do things one way. And that's true of every profession, right? You get into a rut. But I would say I hear more and more that clients are looking for exactly
like the cool sister. Yeah, like the sister midwife, like the one that's like right there with you, you know, and gets you rather than like has trouble with social media. You know what I mean? Or like they want someone that's like right there with them. And so I agree. There's going to be like a really good niche.
Generations. I mean, this is what's true about midwifery is like, I don't know, I'm going to use that Matthew McConaughey quote, like they stay the same age and I keep getting older, you know? Like that's what happens is it's like there's always a new generation having babies. And so they increasingly, especially you know, millennial and younger, like they are looking for their peers because they've been so disenfranchised by the other generations that they don't want old and wise. It's actually disturbing to them. They're in so many so many ways, but in midwifery too. But you brought up a really interesting question, and I would love to pose this to you all. When I was starting out, I was young, but I had babies. I had babies at 20, and 3 more babies in my 20s. And one thing that I saw a definite bias against was people who haven't had children, helping people have children. And so that's the main complaint against male OBs is like, how can they know they don't know? And it transfers over into childless midwives is there's a bias against this. I don't buy it at all. I think some of the best midwives I know have not and will never have children. But I wonder how you all deal with it. Have you come across that? Have you found that bias in people you served? Do you anticipate seeing it? How are you dealing with it?
I have a preceptor that's had 12 children. She's given birth to 12 kids. And I asked her this question, because one thing I don't want to do is I don't ever want to offend a birthing person because I've never given birth. And her biggest suggestion or advice to me was, you don't want to act like you just want to be a support person. You want to be a listening ear and advocate for them and let them know what they're feeling is correct. Like what they're feeling is what they're feeling. What you don't want to do is, what's the word? Tell them what they're feeling or tell them what they're supposed to do, if that makes sense. That's where you kind of go wrong. So I just always keep in mind to always validate what you're feeling. Of course, I can't level with you on that or actually say, oh girl, I know what you're feeling, or I know what you're feeling, because I don't. All I can do is just be there to be a support person to you at that point in time. So I've definitely.
And let's be honest, like even people who have given birth, them saying that, it's projecting their own births into the birthing person anyways. So like no one should be doing that. That's just good advice all around, but even better for sure for someone who's like, you don't know what I'm going through. Why would you say that to me? Absolutely.
Yeah.
I had a client once who was a midwife, hospital-based CNM, and she had a fairly difficult first pregnancy with a lot of hyperemesis gravidarum. And I remember one prenatal, she was sitting on the couch, just sobbing. I mean, just, how they do in the prenatals, like the heart, the sobbing, and the like, this is my midwife. I can finally tell her. And she looks up and she goes, I had no idea. I wish I had understood. I had no idea. I was like, what are you talking about? And she was like, having this huge reflection on how she had been as a midwife all these years. Now being pregnant for the first time, she was like, it's so hard. And I was like, yes, we need to believe what people tell us, even if we don't have personal experience. I love that, Trinity. That's the best advice. And Emily is the best advice giver. Did you happen to be at her last birth just a few months ago, or did she do it only family?
No, she only did only family, but I just got to see him a few days ago, right after her birth, and he's the sweetest. Yeah. She did amazing.
Of course she did. Epic birthing person, that lady. Well, that's such good advice. How about you two? Do either of you face that discrimination that you haven't done this? So how can you possibly help me?
I haven't faced it. I haven't really come to across it as well. I think I recognize that I will just be a more empathetic midwife when I do have babies. I definitely recognize that. But I haven't really come across it yet. So
yeah, it might happen when you first start in practice. That's when it happened for me. It's when I was under the wing of my preceptor, who was one of those ancient midwives, white hair, crone status, everybody get out of the way. The sea would part when she'd walk into the midwifery purview, Linda's here, and so, when we were with her, it was of course, everything is as it should be. But then when I was on my own, I was like, who are you? How about you, Annaliese?
I think that's another one that I faced more from other birth workers than from clients. But again, my preceptor, Beth, who was wonderful, was just just kind of let it bounce off.
Cool.
You can't do anything about it anyways. So
exactly. Yeah. It doesn't matter what they think. Kind of same with the be really young thing. She was just don't let it bother you. And she was really good at reminding me to not let it bother me. I think especially where I'm working in the world, it would be really hard to do with kids. I'm not saying impossible. I'm just saying that I don't think I could pull the schedule that I'm pulling
No. There's some huge benefit to being a midwife and going through students before kids. Oh my God. Because that's the biggest complaint when you're going on the chat boards, aside from all the paperwork. The other major complaint is like, how do you do this with children? So you guys definitely have.
I was thinking that too. Like when people are asking you and you're like, well, how, you know, and you're like, I don't have to find childcare to get to your birth. I would just get out of the door and go. People are like, oh, that's really nice. I don't have to worry about you to worry about me. You know, that's huge. Augustine, I know you have questions, but I have a quick question that I wanted to ask these folks. And that is, I have a 14-year-old daughter, and I hear your stories of you kind of coming into this space at 14. And I also had a mother, Kayla, I had a mother who was a midwife. So I was attending births at like 4 or 5, 6 years old. But I didn't find birth work till later. And then there was actually a moment in my life where I looked back and like had real actual tears for the 15 years lost to other corporate jobs that I wish were midwifery, because now I know, and it's like half of my life was lost to other things. And so I encourage young people to become midwives earlier. And I think about my daughter, and I think about how can I invite her, like something you said, Trinity, was people just sent you books. And the thing about sending books is like, it's an invitation without pushing you, right? It's like, here's a book, read it, whatever, you know? And if you choose to open that book, you choose to open that book, rather than being like, you have to come with me to births. This is your job. You take on what I give you because I'm your mother, right? And same with you, Kayla, right? Like yours was like, photograph, why don't you come photograph this birth, right? Nothing was pushed. And Annaliese didn't have, you know, someone pushing you either. In fact, you had a lot of more hospital experiences, et cetera. So I have a 14-year-old daughter who said to me the other day, all right, what's my first job going to be? And my first thing was birth assisting for me, duh. Like that was my initial gut instinct, was like, I'll pay you $500 to birth assist for me. And she was like, really? And I was like, yeah. And if in my practice, I do 8 births a month, like you're banking, you know? And she's like, that's so much money, Mom. Like, I'll do it. And I secretly in my gut, it was so that I could expose her to birth, normal, good birth, so that she, along with so many other young women, could believe this is a normal event and good and safe. And when she chooses her own birth scenario, but here I am kind of with an agenda. And so I think I want to ask y'all, like, what do you, should we be doing that more? Should we be making more opportunity for young people to see birth, or should we really just be waiting for them to find it? What are your thoughts on that?
I think that more opportunities are awesome. I mean, I definitely wouldn't be where I am without somebody being like, hey, how about you not do family photos? Or like, how about you actually do something very out of the box? Right. So yes, I feel like there is a place to do like more opportunities. And I think starting with something super mellow, like photography or like charting, maybe not being like the person administering Pitocin right away, but like that charting, like that's where I started, was you birth assist. Okay, clean up her vomit and hand me the trash bag and make sure I have gauze. Yeah. Okay, I can do that. Cause like, and like really not like vetting who you're inviting into somebody's space, but being like very intentional. Because my first birth that I went to was, oh gosh, like 36 hours.
Right. It wasn't like the gorgeous 4-hour Instagram births. It was like real life.
It was a primate, and we got to pushing and heart tones down. So we went into the hospital. So it was a hospital transfer as well. And the first OB, I got to be in the car with my mom as she's driving. Like it wasn't like speeding anywhere, but because heart tones would stabilize. But I remember her being on the first phone call with the first OB, and we're just going in for Pitocin. And this OB's like, okay, when you get here, we'll have a C-section ready. And my mom, we rolled up to the hospital and like they're about to get the mom out of the car. And my mom's like, turn back around. We're going to this hospital. And we go to another hospital. And at that hospital, we get pit and we have a beautiful birth. But at the same time, like I got to sit there and be like, oh, like not
this is also what
like,
birth could be.
This is what also birth could be. And that didn't scare me away. Actually, I think that was more like, I am doing this. This is awesome. But like being really intentional to know that this like 13 to 15-year-old to 17-year-old, you're going to be staying up for potentially 36 to 48 hours and you're going to like stay there in that space. Like, are you prepared to like hunker down and just sit and wait and like literally just take care of someone? That's your job. You are charting your listening to baby, or again, cleaning up vomit, and you just got to be okay with that. Like in real life, I realized I can't deal with vomit, but in the birth setting, it's nothing. It's absolutely nothing.
That's hilarious. Your midwife self is fine with it. That's fantastic.
I mean, this comes up, I think, often when clients are thinking about having their daughters at their births or are like playing with listening to heart tones at prenatals, right? And like, there's this little piece of me that's like, oh, maybe they'll become a midwife. You know, like every time I see a young girl at a birth, like a 6-year-old, a 7-year-old, an 8-year-old. And so like, what can we do to make midwifery accessible for the youth without pushing it on them? That's
one thing I always did, which I think really made a difference because half of my students over the 10 years I ran a birth center came from this effort, is that I volunteered to be a guest speaker at both the local college and the local high school. And I eventually got into the middle school, but that was a stretch. And at those high school and college women's studies or health 101 or like gender studies or like any professor that would have me, I would come in and give a conversation. And I would bring a short birth video of what normal birth looks like. And then I would literally put it on and I would say, any questions? And the room would just explode with questions. And then we met their needs and it was interesting. And they walked away with all this new information. And every time I did one of those, I would get a phone call. Can I come apprentice with you? Can I come follow you? Can I come intern? Cool. I want to know more about this. And I think that I got many clients from that too, because, you know, those girls in high school or college who were having babies were like, I definitely want to do this a different way. But I got many students too. And I think exposure is 9/10 of the process. If we just see, then those who are called to it will hear the call. What do you guys think?
I definitely agree with that. I was actually going to state, I fully believe that if we started in the schools, we begin to discuss the topic more. Because at the high school, I still have friends in high school and stuff like that. And they don't know about all the options that they have. Like trade school, that I'm very fortunate that I had a father that knew what trade school was, or, you know, even know that, you know, carpentry, electrician, any of that. I was very fortunate. But other kids don't know that they have those alternatives. A lot of them think, oh, I got to go work a regular, boring 9 to 5. And, you know, I can't really find anything that I'm passionate about. And it's just simply because they're not taught. I did an after school program during the summer, and I went and the girls asked me a whole bunch of questions that I was like, hold on now, let me make sure. But it was
just, does your mom want me to tell you this?
Exactly. It's like, let me think about a proper way I can say this. So honestly, just introducing birth work to them. Like I talked about being a doula, I talked about being a midwife, I talked about being a midwife assistant. It was just beautiful to see that the girls knew that they had other opportunities. And a lot of them was like, oh, I want to be a midwife then. And oh, I want to be a doula. How do I start? So honestly, just introducing them at a very young age. So I would second that, Augustine.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think another big thing that I really saw was so one of the main reasons that I ended up becoming a midwife is because I was in South Asia, like in the Himalayas, in the middle of nowhere, with a student midwife. She's licensed now, but she was in like phase 2 at the time. And we were just helping care for the women in the village because her training was more than anyone else within probably 8 or 10 hours of there. And while we were doing that, she told me that I'd make a good midwife. And so I think there's also the part of like, when there are young people who are interested in being involved, or when you do see students who are younger, just like the importance of speaking life over them. Like, I know that's something which I was probably 2 years into midwifery school before I had a midwife tell me that I'd make a good midwife. And I think just the importance of like making sure that like, that's also like a foundational time in like late teens, foundational time in their lives of finding identity and finding their calling, and the importance of just being extra careful with what we say and how we treat younger midwives and younger student midwives and people who are interested in becoming student midwives. I think it's been an extra reminder for me to like be careful. So that and then also making education more accessible, I think, is really important. The routes are super confusing, especially if you're not coming from a midwifery background, to like try and figure out like, what are you doing? And then like, especially overseas, if you have students who want to be trained over here, I'm walking through that with a student right now, and it is like, it feels like they just have put as many roadblocks as they possibly can. And so, and then with PEP, there's all the paperwork that can get lost or not signed, and there's very little accountability. And so at the end of the day, like the people who are called to it, they'll know or they'll not know, but I feel like we make it intentionally difficult in some ways, where it's like, even if you're called to it, like, how is this even possible? So yeah. I don't know. I think it's a responsibility of workers.
Yeah. Anyone listening, we have a course called Pathways to Midwifery, which discusses all the ways to become a midwife. Check it out on midwiferywisdom.com.
Impromptu ad, Leila. Well, I love this is a great segue into my last question for you today. And that is about the doubt and the wonder and the fear and the challenge and the frustration. It's hard for everyone. Midwifery is hard. In fact, I oftentimes say it's the hardest profession on the planet. There's no other profession that demands so much of you from so many areas of your life and so many areas of education. So it's hard for everyone. But it can be, I think, particularly hard to keep going when you are against the path already, and then being young, you're also not in a flow. There aren't too many peers. There might not be people telling you that you can or you should do this. In fact, there might be people telling you not to. And one of the ways that you can get off the path is by attending a really scary experience, a birth that does not go the way that we wish it would go. Not even with a death, but just the scare, the fear, the wonder, the like, can I do this? This is so hard. What would I do if? And none of you are in private practice yet. So this would be a reflection on your student journey, but I wonder, were any of you shook into the core? Did you attend something that made you think, oh gosh, should I do this?
The birth that I decided to be a midwife was the hardest birth I've ever seen. Baby was fine. Everybody turned out great. Baby had a very significant shoulder dystocia. I mean, it was very significant. It took a while. But like I said, I'm very happy everything turned out well. The mom's very happy with her birth. But it shook me. I was terrified inside. I was like, oh my gosh. But
you saw her working so hard to get that baby out, and you're like, can't do that. Yeah.
That's what I was like, will I be able to do that? Like, if I needed to, would I be able to break a clavicle and get a baby out? Like that went through my head. Would I ever be able to tell a mom, I can't get your baby out? I hope to God I never have to do that. But like, that's the fear. That was the fear that went in my head. Like, oh my.
You kind of just have to know it's your calling for you to be like, I have to keep going. I think one thing that my father taught me, both my parents, but really my father, he implemented me and my siblings, always go out, get what you need to get, but you always bring back to your community. You never forget your community. So that's I think that's just really instilled in me as well. Like, yes, the shoulder to toe, that shoulder to toe should have shook you. However, you have a community. Learn to be efficient as much as you can, but you have a purpose, and that purpose is coming back home. So just knowing that this is your calling is huge. It's very, it's crucial.
Keeps you going.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, my second home birth, we almost lost the mom and I almost quit. That was definitely that was my hardest birth at that point. Just being so early on in apprenticeship, had actually just moved back to the States from the Middle East at that point to, finish apprenticeship and then come back over here, and was like, oh my goodness, what am I doing? Still had jet lag and culture shock and all the things at the time. And so
was it a hemorrhage?
It was, pretty massive blood clotting disorder, hemorrhage. And that was my scariest at that point. And then I had another one after I finished my numbers. And before I sat the NARM, I was in East Africa, and had a 45-minute resuscitation, which baby lived, but it was, just I've had a couple like that, and a few more in between, but those were the two that I would say like most challenged, like, oh my goodness, why am I doing this? And I think it kind of comes down to that you have to know that you're called to it. Like, you have to know why you're doing it or you will quit. Which, like, my reasoning was always like, I'm going to go overseas and, help be a part of the change that's needed, because we are losing moms and babies at a ridiculous rate. I mean, in the US, but especially
low resource areas, it gets even worse. Yep.
Yep. So it just became more of my why. Like, the more I saw that, the more I was like, okay, and how do we prevent this? But I think if I hadn't known why I was doing it, that I would have done something easier.
Yeah, definitely.
You know what's interesting about like going to another country versus staying in the US? It's just a thought that's on my mind, because that's important to me too. And I'm going to be moving back to my home state of Louisiana to practice, in which they have the worst maternal mortality rate in the country, the highest neonatal mortality rate in the country, the highest cesarean rate in the country, the lowest VBAC rate in the country, the highest STIs in the country, and the highest rate of women being murdered by men in the country. So almost the same amount as probably where you, like, it is really bad. And yet the challenges that I feel like US midwives are faced in is like, I won't have access to the TXA to save that mom because it's illegal for my license, right? And you might in your space.
Yeah.
I walked into a pharmacy last week, no license, and got given TXA just to have them.
And so it's like, Louisiana will have the same rates that you have in your country, a third world, low resource country, because they don't trust midwives to.
Well, I think it's more than that. It's not just that they don't trust midwives. It's that it is very openly and clearly a for-profit medical system. And anyone who's not making the money, and midwives don't make the money, midwives save money. They don't make money, right? Midwives keep people out of the system, keep babies out of the NICU, keep you out of surgery. So we are a threat to the system, which is only capital generating, right? It's profit before people. So it's not personal. And I think that's the first thing I really want midwives to know, is that the systemic injustices are not personal. And so, but it's a very interesting comparison of what it's like. Because in India, same thing. When I practice in India, I can get anything I want from any pharmacy. There's no regulations. And I'm welcomed for the most part. And that is not the case in many of the parts of the United States that are suffering the most. I mean, if anyone follows Dr. Midwife, the bill that's just been tried to housekeep to allow various simple fixes around PKU testing and terminology in the birth center licensing or whatever, it just got passed out of committee and into health committee, and they just lost the chance to have it heard this session. because of the bias against midwifery, because those in power are supporting the system, which always centers profits, not people.
Yeah.
And it's exhausting. It's exhausting. That's the big fight that all of you have if you're in the US, is you have this fight to keep your belief and your heart intact while you continually ram into the brick wall that is the industrial medical complex. And it's exhausting. It's exhausting. Mm-hmm. How about you, Kayla? Do you have any stories that shook you, or are they coming? Are they still haven't arrived yet? Because they will. Everyone gets one.
I've had a few, and thankfully, I honestly feel like I've bounced back really well from them. There have been a few, so I'm gonna say in all situations, because they've ranged from serious neonatal resuscitation to hemorrhages to really, really crappy cords. And hematomas, I've been to quite a few births, and so you're never gonna escape birth community without any of these shoulder dystocias or anything like that. So I've just really been able to, I think the way that my brain processes it is, you have a job, and during that situation you do that job, and you know that you did everything that you can. That's how my brain really like gets through those big situations, is you did everything you could, you had a job and you did it. Somebody needed gauze and you got it for them. Somebody needed Pitocin and like a lot of anti-hemorrhagic medications, and you gave it to them. And if we still had to transfer, good, that's where we needed to go. Like, it's just a lot of those stories are that way of like, I did what I had to do.
Yeah, keep going, do what you got to do. Yeah. And then what do your friends think of you? Like, are your friends proud of you? Are they overwhelmed? Are they scared of you?
Do they know you're a badass?
Yeah, do they know how badass you are?
Yeah, like, do they really know how badass you are?
I would definitely say I've had multiple friends come up to me and say, until I started talking to you, I didn't have birth dreams. I have birth dreams now where I'm having babies at home, and I didn't have this until I met you. So I have friends who come up to me and they're like, I had a home birth last night. I don't even have a partner, or I don't even have kids. I'm not even close to getting married.
Oh my God. You are changing culture. You are changing the like the ripples of the time-space continuum are changing because of you, Kayla. That's fantastic.
Or like, just being a midwife, you get to step into your friends' lives as like, even menstrual cycles are just completely out of whack.
They tell you everything, I'm sure.
Yeah, it's just like, oh, Kayla, like I haven't had my period in 2 months. What do I do? Well, that's a little abnormal. So you kind of just like walk through that with them, and I guess you get that opportunity to just like step in, and even just like the minimalistic, simple menstrual cycle. What is the ovulatory phase for your friends? And that's fun. But
that's amazing.
Yeah.
Well, you are all amazing. I want you to know that. If no one has told you recently, you look a lot like midwives. I can tell you'd be great midwives. And it was really my pleasure to visit with you. Leila, I know that, you got a lot out of this too, thinking about your daughter at this stage.
Yeah, I did.
What a blessing.
And I think a lot about, like I was telling you guys before, my own bias of like wanting the wise midwife, and just thinking about like how more wise you as midwives will be than any other midwives out there. Like, it just like mind blown. Yeah. Like when you're 35, with those other midwives who are 35 starting midwifery school, right? Like,
is that you, Leila? Is that you?
Yeah, like, well, I was 30, like 3 or something, but like, yeah. And it was just kind of like, y'all are gonna be the most wise women that people want, because that
time
you
that
already
you've had.
are. I mean, that's the
Already.
part I want to reflect back is I'm so impressed with all of you.
Super.
I can see the critical thinking and I can see the brilliance behind your answers. And I'm really excited for the world to get to experience you and your colleagues. Thank you so much for coming and talking to us.
Thank you. Likewise. It's good seeing you guys.
Yes, thank you for having us.
Okay, well, stay in touch. And we're not kidding. We have an amazing conference in November in Denver, and we have an amazing hand blessing ceremony for the new graduates. So Kayla and Annaliese, you guys should come and be in that circle. All the information's on our website. And thank you guys. Take care of yourselves. Thanks for being here.
Bye, rock stars.
Bye.